everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy League Fantastico Roundtable for Week 12 of the NFL season. Well, we're all strictly business here at the Roundtable, so let's get ready to party, huh? Boom shakalaka. Where's Bud? Where's Bud? Where's Bud? And let's get talking.
Hey, Bud.
How
Good
are
to
you?
see you again. Welcome
Happy
back to the
Friday
Roundtable.
night. Friday Thanksgiving night. Hope everybody's having a great Thanksgiving to you and your
Gobble, gobble, everybody. Gobble, gobble.
Hey, Bud, I love your medallion. What's this all about?
Well, this medallion, courtesy of the Peaceful Warriors, came through a holiday shipment over the weekend. A lot of stuff coming in the mail, a lot of excited general managers, but this fine medallion I thought was appropriate for one of the hottest teams in the FLF.
Is that made of gold? Hottest team coming off a loss.
Yeah,
wow.
white gold. A white gold. They really spent a pretty penny on this. I think this is a team that believes this might be the year.
Yes, yes. I believe white gold comes from the old Incan ruins in Central Asia.
Good knowledge. Good knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you. Central Asia. Big time. Same with the Mayans.
Is that where Tunisia is, Bud?
Well, it's somewhere, it's a little bit around Zimbabwe, I believe. You know, and Luxembourg, kind of in between the two.
Very neutral country.
Yes, yes.
Shall we?
Yeah, let's get right into it. But it is great to be back. You know, we had to take a couple weeks off, but in the meantime, Fantasy League Fantastico rolls along, and we are seeing lots of good things coming from a lot of teams.
It rolls on indeed. We took a week off. I think mostly, we needed a break, a little vacay for the buds. But more importantly, I think to build a little of the drama as we head down the stretch here. We've got this week to play, one more to go, and then it's playoff time. We're going to talk about that in depth today. Playoffs, everybody's still in the equation.
You say to me 1 week before the last game of the season, there are 12 teams that can still have a chance to make the playoffs.
12 teams, Mr. Nora.
Whoa.
12 teams. We've seen the top teams start to show a little bit of underflesh, if that's a word. Whoa. Those teams are human, and those are starting to drop, and we're seeing the rise of some other teams.
Well,
some veteran
certainly
teams.
You don't mean Dr. Dick, who maintains huge outputs week in, week out. This is a fantasy juggernaut. I
would say mojo at its finest. Dr. Dick, you look at it on paper, it's not a playful pickle, it's not a Dick of 08. This is a Dick team that's driven with passion and with a winning attitude, and they just continue to plug and play when needed, but their horses are coming through. The Aaron Rodgers thing is unbelievable. Every week, 140 plus wins for them.
Well, and as we mentioned before, in the Eastern Division and the Western Division, Mason Keat Colby lost twice.
Yep.
We saw the Rollers now losing twice, and the bottom teams in those divisions starting to put wins together, and nothing is settled.
That's a good point. As we said, Dr. Dick has a handle on the division. They've won it. They're in the playoffs. The West and the East, two traditional powerhouse divisions, they're battling for that top slot. And we'll look at that in our weekly matchups this week as we see some top teams going at it for the division title.
Yes, the cream is not rising to the crop in the East and the West. Let's jump right into waiver wire moves. There were really none to speak of.
Well, I take issue with that, but go ahead, bud.
Well, no, I scanned through my scan. I saw nobody really choosing that gem that was going to propel their team to a victory, or a victory that propelled their team to a victory. Really nothing but just middling players doing middling things.
I think it was a usual swap of, I dropped this player this week, they picked up this player this week. No one of impact
Pierre
at least
Garçon
started on their teams. But I did see a Peaceful Warriors squad, which seems to be on a mission, grab a guy named Kevin Smith to command that running attack in Detroit. Posted 42 right out of the gates there.
Yeah.
And
I don't understand, but I don't understand why you would mention that pickup. Didn't the Peaceful Warrior leave Kevin Smith on the bench when he scored 42 points?
Yeah, plob goes the weasel on that one. They got major plob on that, and it did cost them a victory that week. But I think, given the scenario of their 3 strong running backs, they had no choice of playing Kevin Smith at that point. Didn't realize what they really had.
I know, but you shouldn't even mention, this is the waiver wire pickups. Did you put the player, did the Peaceful Warrior put the player in when it counted? No.
They did not.
So it really, you know.
So we're going with no wire moves to speak of.
None, not at all.
All right.
And that's all I have to say about that. But, you know, when we move forward, maybe we'll see something out of some of these pickups, but until they actually produce, you know, it's just, or they produce and they're actually on that roster for that week, it's worthless.
I'd have to say, this is one of those years where we haven't seen those waiver wire ads make huge impacts. You haven't had that Peyton Hillis early in the season. You haven't had some of those ads in the past years that have propelled teams, the Mike Tolbert of late. This Kevin Smith pickup might be that, but if you look across this ad drop board, Bud, I'm seeing a lot of guys that are in and out of teams. There hasn't been that mainstay of big-time player off the waiver wire.
But I have to disagree with you wholeheartedly. We have seen the management of the Boone Humper really coming through week in, week out, and working the waiver wire, squeezing every last point out of that little bundle of players. This manager is phenomenal. We'll get to it. Let's get
to that point, before we do move on to last week's matchups, I would agree with you that the Boone Humper has impressed with his waiver wire moves. He's gone through a lot of players. I think he made some early mistakes, but he's made up with that with some of those key additions, the Antonio Brown, the Demarius Moore. He's now got himself a receiving core that was flyers that have now flown.
Yeah, well, you know, let's hope they keep on flying. Now on to last week's game. We'll start with said Boone Humper defeating Lunches for Wimps 128-1-1. Lunches for Wimps hitting hard times after that nice start. Peaceful Warriors, they lose to the King 130-131-22. What a tough loss for the Peaceful Warriors.
Apparently
the King has won 3 in a row.
The King has the deed to the Warriors' home. They own. There's complete ownership there. That's 2 wins against the Peaceful Warriors by the King, a team that this very show had basically disrespected for week after week.
Yes.
That's a 3-win team in a row. They take the Warriors down for 2 times this year, and that's something to be reckoned with.
Getting hot at the right time. I think that's what we say.
Nate Washington.
Wow. That was Nate Washington, who I had been told had a hip injury, and wow, that's amazing. You know. Dr. Dick defeats Morning Wood. All right, and Dr. Dick defeats Morning Wood 140-123. Once again, Dr. Dick throws out 140-160. He says, "Come and beat me." You know, do you have the horses? They're gonna hit my point total. Most of the time, it doesn't happen.
The Morning Stiff has lost 3 in a row. I mean, if you can say flaccid, this is the time to say it. This particular team has been our GOAT all year about the waiver wire. We can't stress enough how this team has poorly managed itself. The Morning Wood may not win another game. They've lost Fred Jackson now. This team is plummeting because they have no depth on that roster.
He needs to pop in the Viagra or shove in a catheter. You got to decide, are you going to try to compete in Fantasy League Fantastico, or are you going to just go the way of the dodo bird? Because it's now a huge matchup for you this week. It's cut and dry. Well, win.
He's living in his draft picks, and we know when you're befuddled by injury, there's nothing you can do but play your backups. He has no backups.
I spoke with someone who was at the draft and watched Morning Wood. He had such a smugness about him. Like, he thought that he was just going to, you know, the draft was going to take him to the jackpot, and it just doesn't work that way. You have got to